Did you know that kineticists get a once per day spell? This isn't a video about kineticists, but they are one of two non-caster classes that we will be talking about today to get a better understanding of spell slots and the evolution of caster design in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hey everyone, Utkarsh from Spirit Bell Games here. This video is addressed to everyone who finds spell slots to be clunky and wishes that Pathfinder 3rd Edition, whenever it comes out, gets rid of them altogether. Because this used to be me not too long ago. This is my journey on how I came to understand the joys of slot-based casting. Going back to the Kineticist, that once per day spell that they don't get it from their class, they get it from the Gate Attenuator, an item that is as core to the Kineticist class design as the Potency rune is to a fighter's. Once per day, they can cast a first rank spell, and as they get higher levels of the Gate Attenuator, they can cast higher rank spells. But it is still limited to a once per day casting. Is this a spell slot? No, not according to the game mechanics, for sure. Things that interact specifically with spell slots would not interact with this once per day casting, but putting aside those specific mechanical interactions, looking at just how the spell is able to be used once per day, is this a pseudo spell slot? Yes, it is. Does the existence of this once per day spell, this pseudo spell slot, make the Kineticist a bad class? Most people would say no. Even people who dislike spell slots would probably say no, that whatever other issues that the Kineticist has, the existence of this once per day spell usage is not something that significantly affects the design, the playability, and the satisfaction of a Kineticist. My follow-up question then, to those who dislike spell slots, is how many more of these once per day spells would we have to add to the Kineticist class without removing anything else from the class to make the class feel clunky? 4, like the Summoner has? 1 per level, like a Psychic has? 2 per level, like a Sorcerer has? How many spell slot does it take to make this class unappealing to you, if any? When I started playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I imported expectations for spell slots from other games. That they would be scarce, and that starting at around level 3 or 5, they would be combat deciding. But as I played the game as a caster and the levels climbed higher, I noticed that neither expectation was holding true. Higher level slots were not nearly as scarce as I was expecting, but also their effect was not immediately combat deciding in a way that I was used to. It turned out that casters didn't just become the stars of the show at high levels, with the marshals relegated to the role of doing cleanup after the big combat deciding spell was cast. The caster still, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, has to keep playing turn after turn, layering spell after spell, until the sum total of their actions combines with the actions of the marshals, and then together they win the fight. But one thing that still held true from my expectations from other games was that the most powerful spell slots could still run out in a single adventuring day. When I played my first full caster, Elemental Sorcerer, this was agonizing. Until level 5, I was worried that I would run out of all my spell slots. And when I hit level 7, I noticed that even on long adventuring days, I was never fully running out of all my spell slots, but I was still agonized over losing out on my top 2 ranks of spell slots, which, as anyone will tell you, are the cream of the crop when it comes to certainly damage and summoning and healing. A couple of years later, I was about to join a new game as a new player. In the previous game, my friend Jake had played a shield-wielding champion grappler who was quite effective in that game and had many amazing moments. I wanted to do a similar shameless ripoff, except with a spellcaster, and this was around the time when the remastered Warpriest cleric had come out. So I decided to do the same thing, shield, grappling, athletic rush, but with the Warpriest Cleric. The difference I noticed between playing the Warpriest Cleric and the Sorcerer was night and day. I was no longer agonizing over spell slots. I was having too much fun grappling, tripping, repositioning, and just being a frontline tank, setting up our Rogue and Ranger for their ranged attacks by making the enemies off guard. In a pinch, yes, I could bring out a Fawn slot to heal an ally or a Bless to give us a numerical boost in dangerous situations. But spell slots were no longer a limiter to my efficacy in combat. They had become this bonus boost to a character that was already effective in most fights. And as the levels climbed, spell slots went from being these nice, helpful boosts to being these joyful explosions of cool moments. Literally, in some cases, as this particular cleric got access to Fireball, this Blink Strike, Summon Dragon, and these spells provided many highlights of the campaign so far. If you want to catch this cleric in action, check out Pandemonium on Tegan J Gaming's channel. The cleric is level 10. He has Dish Dish Shield. He's about to lead a troop into battle using the new skirmish tools. I'll provide the links to that playlist below. Clearly, my relationship to spell slots had changed. It wasn't until a group discussion I had with players of that game that I realized what had happened. And this was primarily down to two things. One, I had found a non-slot-based baseline action that felt effective and satisfying on a turn-by-turn basis, which in this case was athletic maneuvers. I was not expecting to cast a big spell every round or every other round. I was expecting to flex hard and wrestle monsters down to the ground. The slots were just a bonus. And so I enjoyed the slots as if they were just a bonus. The second thing that I realized was that in this specific system, the difference between a non-spell effective baseline action and optimally placed spells is not as massive as I had experienced in previous systems. Sometimes, yes, a fireball was the right answer, but sometimes it was an athletics maneuver, sometimes it was a casting of a first rank bless. And in some cases, it was just a bonk with my deity's favorite weapon. Going back to the question I asked about Kineticist, this is the reason why, for me, even if the Kineticist was given additional spell slots, it wouldn't hurt the experience of playing the Kineticist because the Kineticist class already has a solid baseline, a respectable turn-by-turn play that does not rely on spell slots. Spell slots just make them more cool in certain points during the adventuring day. So both these points above reconceptualized spell slots for me as replenishable consumables that are there to make my character look cool. Yes, I'm averse to using a real consumable item in a game because I know that once it's used, it's gone. There's a bit of loss aversion there. But not a spell slot, because a spell slot just comes back the next day, much like a witch's familiar that's sent ahead to scout out a trap. And now that we are talking about replenishable consumables, it's time to bring up the other non-casting class that can help us understand spell slots. The Alchemist. Yes, we are dragging poor Fumbus into this. The original Alchemist in 2E got as many reagents per day as their level plus their intelligence modifier. This meant that at level 1, you would have only a small handful of slots. Reagents per day. But the more you increase in levels, the more reagents you got. This made level 1 play miserable for some players on long adventuring days. When you had 4, 5, 6 combats, you would run out of alchemical things to use in combat. So they changed it. In the remaster, the Alchemist gets 2 pools of resources. One is daily reagents, which no longer scales by level, and the other is versatile vials. which is a pool also not scaling by level, but one that comes back at the rate of 2 versatile vials per every 10 minutes, and so generally can be replenished between combats. Now, the level 1 Alchemist play is in a much better spot, people say. Why is the Alchemist in a better spot now? Well, because it can use versatile vials as a baseline. Much like my Warpriest Cleric uses athletic maneuvers as a baseline. And the daily reagents, maybe these niche little preparations you've made, maybe things that you are creating on the spot, they can be these fun one-off items that make your character look cool when that particular moment arises. They are nice to haves, but they aren't necessary each round. Okay, so was the original Alchemist bad design? I don't think so. What I think has happened is a realignment of expectations around what is acceptable baseline behavior by the players. My understanding, given the existence of Quicksilver Mutagen, is that the original baseline behavior was weapon usage. But while the designers found this baseline to be acceptable, a significant part of the player base did not. They wanted an alchemist's baseline to be doing alchemical things. And so the remaster allowed them the opportunity to realign this baseline with the expectations that a lot of players have in mind. Once we follow that thread of logic back to caster discussion, we can see that the same issue existed with pre-remaster casters. It seems that the baseline expectation for low-level caster play was to use simple weapons, like a crossbow. And that's why they used the remaster as an opportunity to massively buff cantrips and level 1 focus spells. No, wait, actually, they didn't do that? So, what did they do instead? Oh, right. They released new classes. Let's think through every class released since the Advanced Player's Guide. Every class with spell slots, or every class that does magic things, let's say. We have the Magus and the Summoner, and neither of these rely on slot usage as their baseline. Even if they have some feats that interact with the slot usage, a lot of the baseline expectation that most players come to understand is making strikes and combining strikes with cantrips in some way on a turn. Maybe a spell strike, maybe a Eidolon strike plus the caster cantrip. We have the Psychic, a caster designed around amping up cantrips with focus points, not needing spell slots to be the core of their play. We have the Kineticist, a not slot-based caster. Not a caster, since technically they don't cast spells, but technically a mage because all their impulses are magic. And their baseline doesn't interact with spell slots at all. And then we have the Animist, a caster with strong one-action, level 1 focus spells, which they can sustain round after round, allowing the cantrip plus vessel spell to feel like an impactful baseline. And coming up next, we have the Necromancer. Yes, there is a strike being made as somewhat of a baseline, maybe a strike plus cantrip, but because that strike comes from a thrall, an undead thrall, it doesn't feel like it's misaligned with the class fantasy. It helps it feel like a core part of the class fantasy. So it seems that their design evolution of casters in this edition is that instead of taking away the power of arcane casters with their 4-slot highest rank casting, which is why wizards and sorcerers are such a potent package, instead of taking power away from that, they're releasing other forms of casters. And mages, let's not forget kineticists. Casters that have more of a power budget on baseline actions that aren't just striking with a simple weapon. But if I do want to play a sorcerer or a wizard, what options do I have? You know, when I go to a restaurant and look at their menu, there are 2 questions that I have to answer. What do I want? And what do they have? The more rigid I am with the answer to what do I want, the more likely I am to have a subpar experience, because ultimately my experience is going to be limited by what do they have? The only way to go around the limitations of what do they have is to go to a different restaurant. Well, I'm eating at the Pathfinder 2E restaurant, and the wizards and sorcerers that are on the menu, well, their low-level non-spell baseline is cantrips plus simple weapon usage. At mid to high levels, the baseline changes to low-level spells or focus spells, plus either weapon usage or a one-action spell. If this is not what I want, and I still want to eat at this restaurant, then my best option is to look at what else is on the menu. All of those other options that I've listed already. If I want the most satisfying baseline, then I can play Kineticist. No spell slots. If I want a strong baseline of strikes, with the occasional spells peppered in throughout the adventuring day to enhance the experience, I can play Magus or Summoner or Battle Harbinger Cleric. If I want decent at-will baseline with lots of spells to provide cool moments, I can play Untamed or Animal Druid, Warpriest Cleric, or Bard. If I don't mind leaning on focus spells as the cornerstone of my baseline, I can play Alchemist and Psychic, and maybe some witches with good hexes. But if I want the most slots of the most powerful traditions like Arcane and Primal, I would still play Sorcerer or Wizard. But I wouldn't play them the way I played that very first Sorcerer from a few years back. I would lean into the weapon usage because that's what they have. That's what they're offering. I would likely pick up proficiency in a short bow, and at least in the early levels, I would cast Runic Weapon on it during difficult fights and combine it with focus spells, cantrips, and skill feats, skill actions. Will that baseline work in the same way that the Warpriest Cleric is really working for me right now? I don't know until I play it out. It's quite possible that I have only learned to love spell slots when it comes with a strong low-level baseline, stronger than simple weapon usage. But it is also possible that I've learned to align myself with the design expectations of the classes in this game. More than that, I can now appreciate why those players who like slot-based casting, who like this consumable, restricted resource, this attrition in Magic, I can understand why they like it. They have a lower threshold for what a strong baseline means to them, and a greater amount of joy that they find from those big spell slot moments throughout the adventuring day. So, do I still wish that Pathfinder 3rd edition gets rid of spell slots? No, I do not. In fact, right now, I don't wish for a 3rd edition at all. I would like them to give us more options with 2nd edition itself. I also know from my Warpriest cleric experience that I can legitimately enjoy spell slots and the moments that they provide. Consumable slots create memorable spikes for me in the play experience. And they also happen to solve a design problem, that of out-of-combat casting of powerful spells, something that becomes a problem in any at-will casting system. But while slots work well for a flexible system like Pathfinder 2nd edition, which can accommodate many types of adventuring narratives and structures, there are other systems like Drawsteel, which aim to create a much more specific narrative arc. And for their specific arcs and game design requirements, their boutique system for casting spells is better suited. And so I bring it over to you. Have you always enjoyed spell slots? Or do you hate them with the strength of 1,000 suns? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Let me know down in the comments below. In the previous video, I talked about spells costing 2 actions. In this video, I talked about spells taking up consumable slots, things that once gone cannot come back for the rest of the day, which are 2 out of the 3 major concerns that people have with spellcasting in this edition. In the next video, I expect to tackle the 3rd and final concern that people commonly bring up, which is full Vancian casting. It will be a video on prepared casters and prepared marshals. But for now, this is me signing off, wishing you all engaging games.